my channel. I'm Dana. Today we are going to do some Easter candy. We're going to use something called couverture chocolate. Everybody has access to. And I'm going to show you how we are going to temper it and tell you why we're going to temper it first. And then it's very easy to put into your molds. I'm trying to bring my water up to a simmer. I have a double boiler for bringing my chocolate up to temperature. We don't need the lid. We're going to put our chocolate in the top part of the double boiler. This has about an inch of water in it, not much. We don't want it to come to a boil. I'm just bringing it to a simmer and then I'm going to shut it off. While we're waiting for that to simmer, I'm going to show you the chocolate we're going to use today. There's many different kinds of chocolates for making candies. This was bought on Amazon, as I showed you in my other candy making video, that we're going to use to cover those cream centers that we made that are like Hercules candy. But today, because of a situation, I have to change my schedule around. We are making the Easter bunnies today. So this is called a couverture chocolate, and what that means, and all that means is, it's a chocolate that's got a higher content of cocoa butter in it and cocoa solids, and it's made to melt. If you are used to using this type of chocolate chip, like you make cookies with, they're not made to melt. Actually, they're made to hold up under heat. That's why when your cookie comes out of the oven, it still has something in it that looks like a chip. These cannot be tempered down into a chocolate that you would use. You can make chocolate sauces. You can cover candies with this if you want to, but it's not going to be the same type of higher quality chocolate or the chocolate that's meant to cover candies or make your Easter molds out of. This is not going to work for what we're doing today, just to let you know. The bars that you can buy in the store, we've all seen the Ghirardelli chocolate bars or any other of the chocolate bars. You see it up above the chocolate chip area. Those are also a couverture chocolate, which is like this, but it comes in a bar form and it's more expensive per ounce than just getting, this was a 5.5 pound bag, cost me $37. And if I added up the cost of the bars it would take to get to 5.5 pounds, it would be a ridiculous amount. These are also, this is Lollipops chocolate, and this one is a Belgian milk chocolate. And the difference between a Belgian or a milk chocolate compared to their dark chocolate, which we also have, this is packaged by Candy, and this is also couverture chocolate. The difference is the dark chocolate has a higher percentage of cocoa butter in it. This has cocoa butter in it and a higher percentage of milk solids, cocoa solids, condensed milks. That's what sweetens it and makes it a milk chocolate. We would heat this at a higher temperature than we would our milk chocolate. And I'm going to do a video on the different types of chocolates, how you temper them, what temperatures each chocolate needs to be at, how you go up, like we're going to do today. You go up in temperature. For milk chocolate, that's 104. Then we bring it down in temperature, and for the milk chocolate, that's 81 degrees. And that, at that point, should be tempered. And there's a way to test that to see if you got it tempered correctly. And it's easy to do. There are several ways to do it. This is going to be called seeding, and I'll explain that. In my other video, I'll show you again how to seed chocolate and also how to table temper, which is really easy and just as fast, I think, as this. And of course, there's microwave tempering, but I'm not a fan of that myself. I'm afraid chocolate is really delicate, and I'm afraid it could burn so much easier by microwaving it. If you do it too long and you've burned it, you can pull out the piece that's burnt, but it's going to all taste burnt. And these are easy enough, these two ways that I talked about, tabling or seeding, and just as quick. That if you want to make sure your chocolates, and especially if you're tempering the first time, are tempered properly and not burning, that's the way I would do it. Tempering also means that pretty much what it does mean is bringing a chocolate up to a temperature that it needs to be at to melt it. And then we bring it back down a slight bit to a certain temperature. And by that, we're going to add the seeds, which is the chocolate chips, down to a precise temperature. What that does is there are crystals in chocolate that can change shape and size, all according to how you heat it, how long you heat it, or how high you heat it. This 5.5 pound bag of Belgian milk chocolate is already at the properly tempered state. So when we melt this and make it warmer, it changes those crystals. And one way to look at it is you can make a chocolate sauce, but you wouldn't heat it too hot. You would melt it slowly and you'd use a certain chocolate and you would let it have the fluidity that you want for a sauce. And then you cook other chocolate and ingredients together, like making a fudge, and you go to a certain temperature and stop and let that cool, and that becomes not a hard chocolate and not a sauce, but a fudge, a solid form. And then we temper it if we want to make things with our molds, and we bring it up to a higher temperature, drop it, seed it with the already perfect little buttons here, stir it and stir it and stir it, because you have to have that movement for those crystals to change. And once that's all put together and brought back up slightly to a working temperature, it's all tempered. And I'll show you how you can check that. But first we're going to look at some of the molds. I know a lot of people are familiar with these. These are, I don't know if you've ever bought them from the cake decorating supply book or website or stores that they used to have. A lot of the 80s was about making chocolate formed things. These are the bunnies with the little baskets. I would then put my mold together, put my clips on, and then go from there. Now, these little chicks that I have, you can probably see there's little that are going to match up when you put them together. When you cut them, which you would do, because basically I would cut this straight down the center. There's my chicken 3D. There's his one side, there's his other. They match up. And then when we mold them with the chocolate, like I'll show you, you're going to use clips, clip them together. So you need the two separate pieces. The other way, and is more popular today but more expensive, is the polycarbonate molds. There's 4 bunnies on here, back and front, and it all fits together. They don't bend like the old molds. They don't discolor. It's a hard plastic type, and this mold costs $30, but it's making 4 rabbits at one time. It's gonna last forever if you take care of it, and everything seems to come out of it easier. When you have your chocolate properly tempered, it will contract away from what it's in. So if it's in a mold, it's going to harden it and contract, so it will easily come out of the mold. To make my bunnies, I also bought from Amazon some little bunny bows like they put on, and I bought a little container of eyes. That will be done with warm chocolate after the bunnies are already molded. Then I'll glue them on with wet chocolate. Also, you need a little bit of parchment paper, because that's a good way to test your chocolate to see that it's set, or that it's tempered properly. And then another thing about the chocolate coatings that you can find in the store, a lot of times they come in square boxes, or even the little chips that you can get of different colored chocolate to melt from craft stores or Wilton. Those are not couverture chocolate, they're a compound chocolate. And what that means is compound chocolate, they remove the cocoa butter and they put back in it either palm oil or coconut oil, a hardening oil that at room temperature stays solid. And so that's not the same as our good chocolate here or our other chocolates. We have white, we have dark. These are all couverture chocolates. If you have more questions about the chocolates, if I didn't explain that quite clearly enough, I will do that more clearly with notes in my tempering video. But right now we're going to make the Easter candy that includes tempering. So I wanted to give you kind of an idea of why you temper it. You need one of the instant read thermometers or one of the infrared thermometers. Either way, keep track of your temperatures on your chocolates and do it slowly so that you don't accidentally go too high on the heat or too low on the tempering. Improperly tempered chocolate will not set. It will not be firm, and you can't touch it without getting chocolate all over your finger because it's not set. Also, the cocoa butter, if you've ever heard the word bloom in chocolate, blooming is nothing more than the cocoa butter rising to the surface and then showing us like white streaks, or the whiteness you might see on some chips that have a little bit of cocoa butter in them. And it also can indicate age on those. But when you temper chocolate and you put it out on your either a spatula to test it or a piece of parchment paper, and you look back at it in 2 or 3 minutes and it's got little white streaks in it or it's not shiny, then it's not tempered properly. And we'll go through that in a minute and I'll show you what I mean. We're going to take this and weigh it, because what we do to temper chocolate, the more you temper it at one time, the longer you can keep it at the temperature you need it to be at. So out of this 5.5 pound bag, I have about 3 pounds, 6 ounces left. And if I take about a quarter of that, as seed, that would be about 3/4 of a pound. So we're gonna put all of our chocolate in our double boiler metal pan. A word about what you put your chocolate in. You can make your own double boiler like I've done. I did it with my chocolate creams by using a bowl and a pan of water. You don't want the bowl to touch the water at all because it's the steam that does the work to melt the chocolate. But don't use glass. It holds the heat far too long. You should use a metal bowl if you have one, or a metal pan like I have for my double boiler. But water is the enemy of chocolate. You don't want any steam on your chocolate. You don't want it to splash out of the bottom into this somehow. When you lift this out, make sure you dry it off, not because it was sitting in water, because it won't be, but because you need to take the steam and the wetness off of it to keep it totally clear of having any kind of water near it. So that would be your best bet if you're going to make your own double boiler, is to use a stainless steel bowl. We still have a pound in here, so we need to take out a few more. Okay, so in this bag, I have the seeds. I'm going to put them in a different bowl. A pound is a quarter of what I'm melting. I'm going to start my water. Now, what else you'll need besides something to measure the temperature easily, spatula that you're able to stir hot chocolate with, your scale. I'm also going to have my spatula. When we get this simmering, I'm going to shut this back off. It's going to take a while to melt because I don't have it in a really large container, but it will melt. Chocolate is delicate and it doesn't take a whole lot of heat to get it started. And you're just going to keep stirring it and blending it and moving it until it's totally melted. Then when we add our seeds, it'll start to cool down. So for milk chocolate, the temperatures are different for milk and white chocolate than it is for the dark chocolate because of the cocoa butter in it. Since there's a lot of stuff in milk chocolate, like we said before, we're going to slowly heat that up to 104 degrees. Once we get to our 104 degrees, we're going to lower it with our seed to about 80 degrees, 81 degrees. When you're melting your chocolate, you want to keep a constant eye on it. We don't want any of the steam or water from this to have any contact with the chocolate. And we also want to stir it occasionally, make sure that it's melting and not let it burn. So I want you to be able to see this has only been on and it's not touching the water. It's steam underneath there. And as I stir it, it's melting that quickly. Again, this is the milk chocolate that we're bringing up to 104 degrees. How long it takes to temper chocolate has a lot to do with your room temperature. If it's very warm in here, it may not set up properly. You may have to refrigerate some of it after you get it set and you know that it's tempered. If it's cool, say around between 66 and 70 degrees, that ought to be a good temperature to temper your chocolate in and not have problems. But as you can see, it's melting right along. I've only got it set on this to about 100 degrees for my water. It'll shut off. This is an induction cooking burner, so it'll shut off if it gets up to 100 degrees. It won't go over. And a 100-degree inch of water in the bottom of this pan is doing the perfect job of melting the buttons and making the milk chocolate melted up to 104 degrees is where we're going with it. It's at about 83. So as you can see, it's probably 66 degrees in my kitchen right now. So it's at 83 degrees. It won't be long. It'll be at our 104. But movement is a key in tempering chocolate because you've got to encourage those little crystals to come together. That is the cocoa butter and the cocoa fats. They're going to mix together and you need to stir constantly when we seed it. For right now, I'm just making sure nothing's sticking to the bottom of my pan and it's not going to burn. Okay, so we're at 104 degrees and that is the highest we wanted to heat our milk chocolate. Don't be impatient and turn your heat up. Keep it low and slow and just keep stirring it. When your buttons are melted and you get a nice shiny gloss like this, you check your temperature. It says 104, take it off of that water, dry off your pan, and then we start adding the seeds of our chocolate and we're gonna cool this down to 87 degrees. So I start with just a little bit like this, and then we stir with our stick straight up. Don't whip it. Don't whip the air into the chocolate. We don't want the bubbles. And of course, the closer you get to the 87 degrees, the longer it's going to take for these buttons to melt because it's cooling off. So you have to be very patient and just keep stirring. Plus the movement is what helps us develop the crystals that we want from the cocoa butter and the cocoa solids. I can see there's still some buttons in there that have not melted. So we're going to keep stirring. Check the temperature. Right now is at 100 degrees. So we're going down. These chips are cooling that down for us. I'm going to add a few more now that those are mostly melted, and just keep stirring. Now, one thing to be said about the Ghirardelli or the other brands of chocolate bars that are used for baking and cooking, those are couverture chocolates, and the couverture chocolate is what you need, which is what this is. So if you don't have time to go online and order a big bag or order the little, buttons of chocolate, you can go to the store and get your bars of Ghirardelli or whatever brand you prefer. Look at the amount of cocoa butter, the percentage. There's dark chocolate, and I think they usually mark those labels, dark chocolate, semi-sweet, etc. So you can always go to the store and pick up some chocolate and then temper it just like this and make your Easter goodies. It's at 97 now. We got 10 degrees to go to bring it down to the 87, and you can see it's a lot thicker than it was. Now that it's cooling down, it's getting thicker, but it's still got a lot of fluidity to it, which I'm sure it's hard for you to see that, but if I lift it up, you may be able to see better how fluid that chocolate is and still thick, very glossy. So at the temperature it's at right now, which is 96, I'm gonna go ahead and dip this knife in and just do a temper test and see what our chocolate looks like. I'm gonna give it a few minutes to set while I'm still stirring. Put some more of our seeds in to keep cooling it down, and stir, stir, stir to keep that movement. That's what tempers chocolate, is time, temperature, and movement. We've been stirring and stirring, and I still have several of the seeds that are just not melted totally yet. We need to get it down to that temperature of 87, but it sure is getting a lot thicker. You don't want to raise your chocolate too high up in the air because we don't want to add those bubbles, but you can raise it up a little bit to help cool it. The air will cool it a little bit before it goes back in. We just want to make sure all of our seeds are melted. 93, so we've gone down quite a bit, and from what I can tell, I don't see any more buttons that have not melted. It looks to be they're all melted, so I'll just go around here and stir some more. One thing they suggest is that you don't put this in the refrigerator while you're tempering, because it won't have the same qualities as properly tempered chocolate the way we're doing it. Don't be tempted to put it in your refrigerator to cool it down. Just keep stirring it and checking it. I've just checked it. Check it again, 87 degrees, and that is our working temperature. So what we're going to do now is a little bit of a test for tempering with this chocolate on a piece of parchment paper. You can see this still has, I guess, shine to it. Looks good, looks tempered. Then you do this and you find out it hasn't even set yet. That's the reason why we temper the chocolate. It has to get to a certain temperature and then cool down to what we need to work with. So I'm going to spread some of what I am satisfied is tempered chocolate, kind of thin, on a piece of parchment paper, which I will show you in a couple minutes. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 minutes to set. I'm going to do bunny suckers. I'll show you how that works real quick. These are super easy. Full of your bunnies. Try to be as careful as you can. I want to try to stay in the mold as much as possible. So don't overfill it because it will spread out when you shake it, and we need to shake it down a little bit in order for them to fill in all the crevices and we'll tap it on the counter, get rid of air bubbles, and put our sticks in. You can put them in, even with a smaller spoon than this, I suppose would work, but I just wasn't thinking about spoon and I just went and grabbed one real quick, so. Well, now that we have our bunnies in their molds, we're going to give them a little bit of a tap, kind of a backwards. Tap them into their mold, turn it around the other way if you need to. Tap it up. You want to get your air bubbles out the best you can. You can see them kind of coming to the top, I think. I'll try to give you a closer look. If you see any air bubbles, you just kind of tap it along on the counter back and forth. After doing that for a little bit and getting them all flattened out. So while we have our bunnies out here, we're going to put our sucker sticks into it, which I don't know how many are in here, but I think there's over 100. Bought these online. You can probably get them. I think I've seen them occasionally in my grocery store over in the Wilton section. If you go over there and grab yourself some sucker sticks, had to go cut them. Put them in and you just kind of spin it a little bit to get it into the chocolate. So when the bunny hardens, it'll be right in that chocolate. If it looks like your stick is still showing and shouldn't be, you can always go back and add a dollop of chocolate into the mold wherever you think it needs to go. And you have a couple of minutes to do this before the chocolate's gonna set. You don't have to be in a super hurry. There's our little bunny suckers. And they can go over here to set up. These would be cute with white chocolate. They would be cute with the candy eyes or dark chocolate. If you have a kid that enjoys, or adult kid that enjoys dark chocolate, you certainly can make them out of that too. They'll come out nice and shiny and cute. Put them by each place setting. My mom always puts a cupcake or a a cupcake or a peep on our plates. This would be something cute to put on your napkin next to your plate for everybody. Adults like chocolate a lot, so there's no reason why they should not have some, right? That's what I'm thinking. So there's our buns, and we're gonna put little sticks in these guys too. I try to keep my hands clean so my sucker sticks don't get chocolatey when I'm putting them in, but nobody's ever refused one because I had chocolate on the stick, so I just try to be careful, but sometimes it happens. Another one, and one more. There's our chocolate bunnies and suckers. And we're gonna set them over here to set up also. As far as I'm concerned, the chocolate bunny suckers and the smaller candies like that, I think would be fine putting them in the fridge. I used to do that years ago, and that's when I was using the not couverture chocolate, but the melting discs instead. And while we're waiting, you'll notice, and this is something that happens when chocolate is tempered correctly. I told you it kind of contracts. And in this case, it contracted, it raised up the chocolate, it's crinkled up the paper from having been tempered and sitting there. It has contracted on that surface. So you'll notice that it's got the shine to it. That streak in the middle is a knife streak. It's not a cocoa butter streak, but you don't see any white streaks of any kind in our chocolate. It's all mixed together. It snaps off and breaks into shards. If it was thicker, you'd hear the snap a little louder. One of the bunny suckers, if I snapped it, you'd really hear it. But these are just shards of chocolate that can be added back into, like where I dumped out the chocolate from the hollow bunny frames. Those can be, you can hear that a little bit, I think. It's not soft, it's set. When I rub my finger on it, there's no more chocolate. You don't see fingerprints. It's not wet like the knife was. So these are all tempered pieces of chocolate. I should have did them thicker so you could hear that snap better, but that's perfectly tempered. That's what went into our suckers. So when we take them out of these plastic containers, they'll have a super shine on them. And also, I'm gonna pour out my chocolate because it's gonna be put away for use on another day when we chocolate cover our peanut butter eggs. I guess I can bring you up here now. When we chocolate cover our assorted creams that we made, like Hercules candy, we'll be using this kind of chocolate, and I'm gonna hand cover them. I'm not gonna, of course, I don't have an enrober. I don't have a machine, but I will be doing the small batches and hand covering them with the chocolate, and it will be the couverture chocolate that we're going to, again, temper, get it ready, and I'll show you how we coat those and how we're going to make and coat our peanut butter eggs when I do the next video of making candy. And after that, I'll show you how to temper chocolate 3 ways: microwave, tabling, and again, seeding: white chocolate, milk chocolate, and then the dark chocolate, which is the one that's more different than the rest, temperature-wise. So I will be back tomorrow after my bunnies and everything is all set up and show you what we made. So see you tomorrow.